Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Alexander Kay. I'm the director of the Schusterman Center for Israel Studies here at Brandeis University. I'd like to welcome everybody to the first part of what will be an ongoing series dealing with Israeli civil society during war. The events of the last few weeks, now coming up to months, has been absolutely devastating in on many levels. And people who sort of follow the news in Israel and in Gaza, especially from the United States, will see a lot of coverage of the military aspects of this, the political aspects of this, the international relations aspects of this, and so on. What often is overlooked in these kinds of conversations is the fact that at times like these, there are massively important and, in fact, heroic things that are being done in civil society by Jewish, Arab, Palestinian, Israelis. And those are some of the stories that we wanted to bring to a wider audience. I'm delighted to introduce my colleague, Professor Yehudah Mirsky, professor at Brandeis University in the Near Eastern and Judaic Studies Department. And Professor Mirsky teaches and writes about Zionism in Israel and Jewish intellectual and religious history and human rights and many other things. He's convened this series, and I'm going to hand over to him now to introduce our guest and to have the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And also, before we get just a very deep thanks to our wonderful Schusterman colleagues, Tian, who's really put this together wonderfully, along with Shana Weiss and Karen Goodblatt and you. So it's my profound pleasure to introduce Professor Michal Muszkat-Barkan, who is perhaps no stranger to some of you, not least because we had the pleasure of hearing from her talk about her scholarly and educational work at the Schusterman seminar series that my colleague Dr. Shana Weiss runs in the past year. Michal Muszkat-Barkan is a professor of education at the Hebrew Union College of Jerusalem. In general, her work explores the points of intersection between teachers' own experiences and subjectivities and the ideological and institutional frameworks in which teachers find themselves, that contain them, constrain them, or enable them. Over time, her work has steadily broadened from sort of straightforward studying Jewish rabbinic education and teaching to her recent and truly path-breaking work on the immensely complex and at times literally explosive life worlds of Jewish and Arab teachers in Jerusalem. And generally, her work combines careful field work, careful listening, careful theoretical consideration, and always with powerful intellect and a very human heart. So it's a great pleasure to have Professor Michal Muszkat-Barkan here with us today to talk about some of the work that you and colleagues have been doing in Israeli civil society since October 7th. So to begin, Michal, if you wouldn't mind just I just said a little bit about you, but if you could please share with us a little bit about yourself, your work, and the different sectors and organizations that you've worked with till now, because now we're talking about civil society, which is, of course, where all kinds of sectors, organizations, institutions come together, and lately in some very unexpected ways.
Yeah, thank you, Yehudah. And thank you for inviting me to share what we've been, going through at this time. And I wish we could continue talking about our research and practice, but we are in a different time. So I'll share with you some of my experience during the last month, but maybe more. I'll go last year, which I feel it is connected. And I want to start, before I talk about myself professionally, I would like to start with this picture and dedicate my words to these people. So this is Aner Shapira. He died at 7th of October. He and his best friend, Hirsch Polin, they went to the music festival in the south, and Hirsch Polin was kidnapped. Aner Shapira was, they were both soldiers in vacation for a weekend, and they went to the music festival, and when the terrorists started killing people all over, they went to a small room and hide there. And Aner Shapira afterwards, people who oh, I'm sorry, who were saved from that moment, they told that he was standing at the entrance of the door, and every Limon, what's the name?
Every hand grenade.
hand
And the
grenade.
video has recently surfaced of him tossing of the hand
Yeah.
grenades that he was tossing back.
Every hand grenade who were thrown into the room, he thrown back. So at the 7th one, he was killed, and his best friend, which is the Hirsch, he was kidnapped to Gaza. And here you see my husband's family. They live. This is Narkis and her daughter Emily. They lived in Be'eri, in the kibbutz Be'eri, and this is Hila, her friend. The two of them lived in Be'eri. They are from our family. They went for a weekend to be with their family, and she was murdered. She was kidnapped, and also her friend Hila was kidnapped. So I just want to dedicate my words to all of them, and I hope they will come back soon.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Thank you, Michal.
I will, for me, it's important not to forget the people that, faces. So even though we're talking about 240 kidnapped people and more than 1,400 people were killed at that 7th of October, I want to I can't remember all of them, but I want to mention them.
Thank you.
So I'll go to your question and tell you who I am
A little bit about yourself and what you were doing before October 7th.
Yeah. So I'm a professor of Jewish education at Hebrew Union College, and for many years I'm the head of the education department. And for many years I was not only teaching and doing research, but I started a program, an MA program named Rikma, which works for a second. It teaches second degree to educational leaders in collaboration with the Hebrew master's degree, in collaboration with the Hebrew University. And the main idea is to work on pluralism in Jewish education. So this is Rikma, and sorry, and second program that I spoke about in my recent research is the Teachers Lounge. And Teachers Lounge brings together Jewish and Arab teachers for a professional development program. And this is something that we started 9 years ago. So we have like almost 400 graduates of Teachers Lounge and almost 100 graduates of Rikma. So this is
the program in which Jewish and Arab, Israeli Jewish and Arab Palestinians teachers from Jerusalem do teacher training together for a year with you.
Yeah. And the last 2 years, we've been opening this program not only in Jerusalem, but also in Ramle and in Tel Aviv, Yafo, and in the north, in the Galil. So we
And I imagine
extended
it's been paused for the last month or
it
so.
has been paused, and I can talk about that later. Yeah,
Right.
it's
Quite a remarkable program, and I urge our listeners to go back and find the video of Michal's last presentation to us on this. So Michal, where were you on October 7th?
So on October 7th, I was preparing to go to the shul in the morning. It was Simchat Torah, and we heard the sirens, and I was shocked. I never thought of this as a time of danger, and I met all my neighbors in the shelter down there, and we were shocked. We never expected this to happen, and since I'm an Orthodox person, so I don't open my phone regularly, but at this Shabbat I did, and I heard
as many of us do.
As many of us, yeah. And I start hearing that something is happening in the south. I have to tell you that at the beginning I did not understand how huge it was. And I have a friend in Kibbutz Nirim, which is in the south, and I texted him, how are you? And he said, I'm in the shelter. So I said, okay, keep yourself safe. And I didn't know that at that time, that the terrorists were all around, and the fact that he was in the shelter wasn't he wasn't safe there. So only a day after I wrote him that I realized what happened. I wrote to him, how are you? And he said it took me 30 hours to go out of the shelter, which I didn't know that. In Jerusalem, we went to the shelter, heard the bombs, and then went back home. But he was 30 hours in the shelter, and he went out safe. But as I told you before, some of my husband's family and many others were in the shelter, but it didn't help them. So at the same day, when we realized that it is a war, so I called my friends in the protest, safeguarding our shared home.
About which we'll talk. One thing we haven't mentioned till now is that Michal also in the past year, in addition to all of her other work, has emerged as a key leader of the democracy protest movement, especially in Jerusalem. And we'll be talking about how that work has actually been part of or greatly contributed to the great civil society mobilization that we're seeing now.
So that day, I called them, and we started thinking, what do we need to do? So I will tell you what we did. But at that day, we just started looking for places for blood contribution. We worked with Magen David Adom, which is like the Red Cross in Israel, and starting opening shelters and thinking of the civic society. And many of my friends and kids of my friends got the emergency call to go to the army. So that was in the 7th. And now, if you want me to go back 10 months ago.
Yes, because what had you been doing the last 6 months before October 6th?
Yeah.
October 7th, excuse me.
So I'll share with you. So 10 months ago, it was, just a second. Okay. 10 months ago, at January 20, after the government was elected, they decided that they're going to go to do a judicial reform. And this is what I felt with many others was supposed to ruin our democracy. So with at the beginning, at the first time that protests began in Tel Aviv, I went to Tel Aviv, and then we decided with several friends that we need to have a protest in Jerusalem, and we gathered and decided to call it Shomrot v'Shomrim al Habayit HaMeshutaf, which means safeguarding our shared home. And we felt that we have to protest because we want to guard our home. And Israel is a shared home for many people. And we felt that this government has been very sectorial and doesn't take care for the various societies that are part of this home. So here you see in the small picture, first Motzai Shabbat, first Saturday night, we decided that we will protest in front of the president's house because we felt this is one of the symbols of the Israeli democracy and leadership. And so we went to protest in front of his house, and you see me and my son. We thought maybe a dozen people will come with us, but then we realized that we were like 1,000 people. And since then, we were protesting every Saturday night. And I will tell you shortly, just because the Jerusalem protest has been very unique. You can see here the people that we invited to talk every Saturday night.
This is some of the speakers who have been at the Jerusalem protests, and sort of just to sort of help our participants make sense of this, sort of to characterize like the diversity of the Jerusalem protest.
You can see here Arab people. She's Arab and Ethiopian and LGBT and ultra-Orthodox. And so people really from many groups in Israel, we invited them to be the speakers, because what we wanted to say is that our society is not formed of people who are the same, is not form of people who do agree with each other, but we have to study to live together. So that was the uniqueness of the Jerusalem protest. And for many weeks, we used to get phone calls every Sunday after the protest saying, oh, I didn't like that person. It was too religious. It was too left-wing. It was too right-wing.
And yet that was part of the idea of the Jerusalem protest.
That was part of the idea, and also,
and yes, please.
So here you can see the amount of people in the middle, the amount of people who would come every Saturday night. But also we did several activities that were unique to the Jerusalem protest. One of them was the chain that you can see here. We brought many people that did not agree with us to do a human chain from the Western Wall to the Knesset.
And also, if I may, Michal, and I think just to sort of to convey some of the context of this to our participants, it's right, and then we will in just a second get to October 8th, but sort of that through this protest movement, because it had a wide tent, it both reflected and cultivated much of the solidarity that then kicked in on October 8th.
Yeah, and the same message 1 day before October 8th was the message of what we did in Sukkot. We brought in Sukkot, we called for every Israeli to open up their sukkah and invite people who are not friends to get face to face and talk about the future of Israel. So we not only protest, but we also called for solidarity and face to face discussion.
And then it turns out that, you know, under the suppressive circumstances, much of that then again provided the basis for October 8th and afterwards. And if you please could tell us about how that began to work.
So let's go to October 8th. So first thing we did was to open the Operations Center room with many groups. You see here all the logos of both the student protest, our protest, and other parties who were running for the Jerusalem municipality who were different. And you see here, and I'll show you a short video of me walking in this operation room. We were getting many phone calls from all over people, both soldiers and people who were wounded and calling for many needs of people, and we gather all the needs and try to give supply to people who were left without their homes, for people who had to go quickly to the army, for people who stayed without anything at their home immediately. We help people to move from place to place. We help doing babysitter, I'll show you in a minute. And also after a few days, people started arriving from the south and the north to hotels in Jerusalem. So we had to help them, to stay in a hotel. So you can see here, we opened a school for the kids from the south. We brought clothes to the hotels. This is a kind of a contribution to newborn babies that their moms gave birth in Shaarei Tzedek, and also in the center room we translate everything to 5 languages, because there are many people in Jerusalem and all over who do not understand Hebrew.
So what are if you could just run through, what are the 5 languages that everything gets translated into?
French, English, German, Amharic, maybe Arabic, I can't remember, but like 5 languages. And
also, I might point out that if you could go back to the previous slide for a second, Michal, if you wouldn't mind. So if the previous slide. So if we take a look at the organizations that are involved in this, again, it's a range, right? Some of them are organizations that were political parties for the Jerusalem municipal elections that have since been canceled. And interestingly, but there's a range of ideologies here. Lev Echad is this sort of community crisis infrastructure, right? It's a sort of, as I understand, it's a humanitarian organization that provides pop-up infrastructure during times of crisis. And what's really neat is the Nissan Nativ Acting Studio, which gave its building, right, 5 stores. Gave a 5-story building. And actually, this is for later, but somebody did just ask in the chat. Well, I guess later we'll talk about, because when we mentioned languages, you didn't necessarily mention Arabic, but we've talked about the work that you've all been working on doing in East Jerusalem as well, not just in West Jerusalem.
I will ask Menchi, they did a short video of me in the Operation Center. So if Menchi can share it.
Before we start the video, just to sort of, if we could just give people a picture of what goes on, right? You walk into this center, there's these rooms where people can get clothing and toys for the kids and books to read and shoes and this and that, right? And all kinds of stuff, as well as by the way, just one last thing before you show us the video, all of this was up and running how long into this?
We started it at the 7th of October. So, every day we spent there at the first month, like every day from morning to midnight. And, you'll hear some numbers of the volunteers that have been there. So
please.
Hebrew Union College has been forming Jewish leaders since 1875. Since that time, we have studied, created, experienced, and applied Jewish wisdom to meet the most pressing moral, spiritual, and communal problems of our times. In just a moment, we will see the work of one of our professors, Michal Muszkat-Barkan, who is working as one of the leaders of the protest movement just a few months ago, transforming that movement of civil society into a relief effort that crosses political, religious, and other boundaries.
Welcome to the Situation Room of Jerusalem. I've been spending here every day since 7th of October when the war started. This is a part of what I do as a professor at the Hebrew Union College and as one of the leaders of the protest safeguarding our shared home for the future of Israel. When the war started at 7th of October, Safeguarding Our Shared Home and other colleagues from Jerusalem decided to create the Situation Room. We gather many groups together, and together we created this amazing place where 5,000 volunteers are trying to help and recruit all the needs and give help to everybody. Here we are in the Otef, which is the store for the people who were evacuated from their homes. All the Jerusalem citizens were asked to bring clothes and toys, and everything is, of course, for free. We equipped soldiers with sleeping bags, sweatshirts, or whatever they need. They could come here to get socks and underwears and everything they wanted. We believe that we need to take responsibility for our society. We believe that the values of solidarity and pluralism need to be part of the future of Israel. And this is the reason why we all together arrive to work with everybody for the future of all the society.
We have 20 different departments. We have sent 15,000 different boxes, both to military needs and civil needs. We have sent away 30,000 hot meals to those evacuated and to soldiers, and much, much more. Everything is happening here. Everything is voluntary based, and everything is being done in amazing partnership.
I know that this is a tough time, both in Israel and abroad, and I want to call each of you to be part of something, to be part of supporting each other, to be part of this huge effort to dream of a better future for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for your interest and concern. We could not do this without your partnership right now.
Thank you. So I think that does convey some of the sense of just the sheer, I mean, for, I and others who've been in the center, the sheer intensity and energy and activity is really quite remarkable. I'd like us to take about 10 or so, 10 to 15 minutes to talk about, to pull out a little bit and to hear some of your reflections. So it's a remarkable effort, right? I mean, we've just gotten the merest glimpse of it. In this work, Michal, first, if you could just, like, on a point of information, there's things that are being done for civilians and things that are being done for soldiers and their families.
Yeah.
And could you just, like, outline that for a moment? Because I think many of our listeners might be,
Yeah.
it just would be helpful to
Yeah.
order some of
Yeah.
that. And I have some other questions for you.
Okay, so things for soldiers are related to the fact that in one day, Israel had to take thousands of reserve soldiers who weren't prepared to a war. It was a huge surprise for everyone. So when a soldier go to the front, they need equipment, and they weren't equipped. Even, I'm speaking not
But
only.
you're not providing
with,
the
no,
weaponry,
not weapons,
right?
not weapons, but it's cold out there, it's raining. They didn't have, switchers, they didn't have the basic things, and the army wasn't prepared for war. So we had to, to buy for them, basic things. And the bags and stuff that soldiers need to, there were many, soldiers taking videos of themselves talking, laughing about how much they ate, because people sent them lots of food. But seriously, they need even now tents and sweatshirts and soft shells, and it's cold out there. They're sleeping out in the cold. So this is something that they're protecting us. So this is one thing. The other one is for people who were evacuated from their homes. And when they had to run away from their homes in a minute, so they didn't take anything with them. So you saw that we created it like a store. So it's fun to be there. It's for their personal dignity to walk there and feel that they're choosing. They have a fitting room. They can
Right.
Their kids
That it's
are
not just here.
there.
So it's not just they show up and they say, here, you take this, you take this,
Yeah.
you take this, you take this,
So
but they can
fun.
choose things for themselves.
Yeah, and people who live in a hotel, just imagine what is it to live for a month in a hotel. They don't prepare food, they don't do laundry, The kids are all around. They're very worried about what happened to them. Lots of traumas they've been going. So we're trying to provide support from many aspects. And also, we are waiting for the government to take
well, yes, we will get to the government, but also you're an educator. And well, so one of the distinctive features of the Jerusalem protest movement was that it was run very much by educators, not entirely, but largely. So could you talk a little bit about the schools and educational institutions that have also popped up to take care of new needs in the last month?
So the kids needed to do something in the morning. So the center room, we provided from the beginning centers with toys so they can play, but also we opened schools for kids to come. But you have to understand that if kids are in trauma, it wasn't easy to bring them together. And also it wasn't easy for their families to, to feel safe enough. So it took time until the kids went out there, and it takes time to create, to feel the openness, and things that kids are drawing are just heartbreaking. So just hear them talking about, what they've been going through. It's hard, and they live in hotels, and they don't have even places for playground, because the hotels are all over. If you imagine a hotel, even in Eilat, when it's supposed to be like Las Vegas, a nice place with pools and everything, people didn't get to the pools. They were so sad. They felt so bad. Lots of mourning, you say, Evel. People were sad, their families were killed, they ran away from homes. It's not fun to be in a hotel. So we try to provide different aspects of help. And to create collaborations with different populations that arrive. Sometimes to the same hotel will arrive a strong population, economically, and
you mean sort of people who are socioeconomically
strong,
coming
people,
from a stronger situation to begin with.
And also people who had many needs, special needs, and low socioeconomic background. So it wasn't easy for the populations to get together. So there were many challenges in accepting, like 20,000 people arrived to Jerusalem in 60 hotels. It's hard to accept all those, and many others who just chose to come to Jerusalem. So we created adopting families and people who can come and have a meal in a different family, and people who were doing the laundry for the people in the hotels. So many ways to that the civic population in Jerusalem really tried to welcome those people.
If I could draw you out on something you began to talk about a few minutes ago, and that's frankly what the government has been doing or not doing.
Yeah. It's hard, but
please,
if, we would expect our government to take responsibility and to take leadership. They should have been leading all this, and first of all, they weren't there to protect the people at the 7th of October, and second, they didn't lead anything of the evacuation. They only gave the hotels, but for a month we've been leading the hotels, and and they have to start rebuilding all these places, and they're not doing it so far. They did not give the money to rebuild the south and the north. They're hesitating in doing everything. They're very political. So, in all the
would you mind when you say they're very political? I mean, we're not doing partisan politics here, But I think
Yeah.
it's important for people to understand, because so much of what was fueling the democracy protest, it wasn't just an abstract philosophical debate. It was also very concrete things that about how government was supposed to be working and what was a professional civil service and what were
Yeah.
good ways. So could you talk about that a little, please?
Yeah, so I would just say, I would expect professionals to do the work, but at the last 10 months, we've seen many civil servants who just quit their jobs because every administration was getting very political, and the money would go to the sectors of the politicians. So if for an example, at the beginning in the hotels, not all the hotels were equal in the way they accepted. So I called one of the civil servants who really wanted our help. They asked for our help after a month. She told me, I know we're very late. Please help us. So we said, okay, we will help you in everything. And then I told her there are hotels where the people doesn't get 3 meals a day. So she said, oh my God, it's very important they will get hot meals. Can you provide them the hot meals? And I said, no, we asked for donations, but not for hot meals for people who arrived. We even though gave hot meals. One day there were like 40 Haredi people in one of the hotels, and a volunteer would come to the operations center and told me they're starving. Can I buy them falafel? So I said, yes, take my credit card and go and buy them falafel. So just they'll have something to eat. So things happen very fast. You have to take care of what's going on, and the government did not do it at the beginning. Now they are trying to do their best. But I think they're very weak now.
And there were also, I mean, I can't help mentioning that there were some government ministries that were taking credit for things that you and your colleagues were doing.
We had a kind of a joke that this is a government of roll-ups. They would come to the hotel, put a huge roll-up where the ministry of such and such is welcoming you, and they put the roll-up and then went out, took a picture and went out. So yeah, I think that some of the civil servants in the government, they do want to do their job, but I think they're not equipped.
But also I think some of the civil society, as I recall, some of the civil society organizations that you've been dealing with are ones that are on the different side of the political map, but like you are patriots and have a sense of responsibility to the society that goes beyond their own sector.
You see, many of the people from the protest, even in Jerusalem, they said at the protest they would not go to the military service if they will be called. But at the minute that the war started, they all went there. So everybody, even though we are all critic about this government, when you have to we have to protect ourselves, people are going. So.
And do you find you've been able to work with organizations on the different side of the political map than you?
What do you mean?
Like, right wing, that sort of thing.
Sure. In the center, we have, some institutions that are more right wing and left wing, and I'm a part of a group that is not right or left, because we're against the judicial reform. So I wouldn't say it's a left thing, but we definitely collaborate with people. There were Haredi ultra-Orthodox volunteers in the hotels. So we work together, everybody.
And could you say a word about your work in East Jerusalem as well?
Yeah, sure. So at the Operations Center, we have one of our teams is working in collaboration with people from East Jerusalem to support them also, because now it's even harder to get supply in East Jerusalem, and the movement is harder, and people are now very, the situation is so tense that the movement is getting hard, and people are not are afraid to go out. So we helped East Jerusalem people to provide equipment and food for families in the East Jerusalem. And we got some groups who wanted to also promote self-help in East Jerusalem. So we help them not only to bring from West to Jerusalem, to create operation centers in East Jerusalem. So that was the, the emergency. But I'm now in the process of thinking further, because now, since my professional work is with Arab and Jewish teachers, we are in a trauma now. People are, we went, many steps back in feeling safe, getting back to business. Even though we expect from ourselves to, continue to go on with all the work that we've been doing in coexistence, it's hard. My facilitators are heartbreaking. So tomorrow I'm going to meet with them, and we're going to do a separate encounter, Arabs and Jewish separately, to discuss what's on our hearts. And research that has been done now says that people are both sides. We have different narratives. We are afraid to trust. Even though I have great friends and colleagues, Arab colleagues, we all know that this war will end and we will continue living together, and we have to work towards that. And Jews and Arabs are great people, but what happened now makes us all be afraid. What if not? What will happen if we can't trust each other? What will happen if we will continue fighting each other? If terrorism will continue being there? I personally and professionally am committed to coexistence, work, and education. But the way to do that is now harder. And I can talk about that much more if you want.
Because my last question, very briefly, because the audience is very patient and we want to hear from them. So in terms of you and your work going forward, like what, and also some of the people you've been working with, sectors, institutions, what do you think will change? Like what will stay the same after this, but what will change in your work and the work of your colleagues?
You mean especially in
your field, in your education work, in education coexistence, and in civil society organizing?
So first of all, I think, So I now feel that teachers need much more empowerment and support to educate kids for civic involvement and activism. I think this is one lesson that we've been learning during the last year. Teachers need to be much more educating for the kids to be activists, to be social activists, to take responsibility for our society, not to be passive audience of the media, but to be more critical about things that they're seeing in the media. So this is something that we need to work with teachers. And in the area of coexistence, I'm sure that we will need to go back to basic assumptions and work against prejudice and against hatred. But since we are in the middle of war and lots of people have been suffering, so it's very personal. We need to listen to each other. We need to hear the pain. We can't just jump to preaching. We have to go through what we feel now, and our hearts are broken.
And so, so thank you. And in the spirit of listening, Alex, if you would please share with us some of the questions that have been coming in over the chat when we have a decent bit of time to go over them.
Absolutely. So a whole number of questions have been coming in. I'm going to do my best to sort of put them in categories so that we can get through as many as possible. The question I want to end with, so not for now, but I want to make sure that it gets mentioned, is that numerous people on the call have asked different versions of the question, how can they help? People have asked if personally coming to volunteer is helpful or gets in the way, especially for people without sort of medical expertise or anything like that. People have asked how to contribute financially to your organization. There are different ways to kind of get money to you, but I think they want to make sure that it really gets to you in the most efficient way possible. So let's end with that, so that's a piece of information that people hear last. There's been a number of questions, you touched on this in the conversation, Michal. There's been a number of questions about your pivot from this kind of democracy movement to your current volunteering work. And the tone of the questions, just to, if I could summarize them, is essentially, is that previous work still necessary? Is it still possible? Is it completely on hold because the emergency is so great? And are you planning to come back to it in a serious way afterwards? What is the status of that?
Okay. Okay, so I'll start with this and then I'll go to the ways to participate and contribute. Maybe I'll show you one more picture. We had to, so here see, we had to go, I went with my students to do some agriculture. This is an area that we definitely, people need help because we don't have the workers, not in the south and all over Israel. So this is something, if people want to come and do agriculture, that would be great. Second is that, just a second, I'll go to the next slide. Here you see, we were thinking during the first month, we didn't go back to protest. But last week, we gathered in a Saturday night and decided this is the Anel's father showing his picture. And this is myself talking to the crowd. And we decided that we need to go back to the streets, first of all, to be together. And second, to say that we are not forgetting our troops, the people who were kidnapped and the people who were killed. And we need to be together. We need a spiritual support for the community. But we are considering whether we should go to protest now or later. It's hard to protest while our people are fighting. It's not easy to go to protest, even though we all believe that this government is not doing their responsibility. But we have to think what's the best way to do that. People are, I guess that fighting for democracy became now a habit that we do have. We are all very aware of when the government is trying to ruin the democracy. So I guess it won't be easy for them to continue doing the judicial reform. So there may be a minute or an evening or an event that people will go out to protest. But for now, we're trying just to talk about taking responsibility and hoping for the government to take our message seriously and take responsibility.
Talking about taking responsibility, Michal, the fact that 50% of Israelis are volunteering at the moment is a testament to just the incredible mobilization and care of the population. It's also a signal of what is arguably a catastrophic failure of the government to do the work that it needs to do. So there's that. There's of course the work that you were doing beforehand with the democracy protest movement. And in addition, there's the question of the failure of the government with the October 7th attack themselves and the fact that they even occurred. So a number of questions have come in about how your trust or otherwise in the government, especially as now a vast, tragic humanitarian crisis is unfolding in Gaza as well, how that affects the way that you go about this work?
How can you reframe the question? What
Yes.
are you asking?
Essentially, your work requires, this is how I'm kind of summarizing a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
Your work requires so much kind of resilience and giving and giving and giving and giving and giving. To do that, you want to be doing it for, you know, a state that you have trust in. And yet there are so many things that are happening that, as I'm hearing you, are undermining that trust, at least on a political level. So how does that work out? And especially now, as you're seeing the humanitarian effects of the war, how is this affecting your ability to do this work in a sustainable way?
It's a kind of a everyday struggle. You know, we are so surrounded by sorrow and grief and needs, that every day when we wake up in the morning, we are afraid to look at to see what's new, because we're afraid every day soldiers, kids are dying. And we need to, it's true, we need to help each other to be strong, and we need to support families that lost everything. And sometimes it's helpful to be in doing and to continue doing so, because we are so worried about the future. We are so worried about the future of Israel, what will happen next. So I feel that 10 months taught us that we are not helplessness. It taught us that even when the situation looks as if we can't influence, we learned that we can influence, that we can do something. So, you know, one of the lessons that I've learned is that we need to find ways to believe that we can make changes in our reality, because we did so. So we will continue believing in the power of the people.
Michal, let me read you a question that came in from a colleague of ours in Morocco. So this is a professor that we know, and he wanted to ask about whether there's been any politicization of the civil society work. In his experience, he has seen at times of crisis, either natural or human-made, that groups, and he's writing explicitly about some Islamic groups, but it doesn't need to be, sometimes use these moments and, you know, their giving of their volunteering or providing social infrastructure to cement their own power in society. Is that something that you're seeing at all?
Yeah, it has bothering us, because as a protest group, you know, we had to decide if we are helping wearing our shirt and, you know, putting our flags of the protest group, or if we're taking out our shirts and symbols of the protest group. And we decided most of us went without the shirts of the protest, even though there were groups who did so. And it also helps because, you know, for some of the people in Israel, they thought about the groups of protest as if we are all not loyal to the country. But when they saw how dedicated we were, so for some of them, they said, oh, okay, so you feel that you're part of this country. So we've been thinking, what are the ways to convey our responsibility and messages? And it's hard to decide what way to do that. So we're not that good we're not politicians. We are social activists. So it's not that we know how to transform this yet to political power. And but we do want to have influence on our politicians and on the next elections, but we're not politicians ourselves. So most of I hope that leadership will emerge from the protest group, but it's not yet there.
So let me thank you, Michal. I'm going to ask one question, and this is a big question and a difficult one. We have 3 minutes left. But I want to make sure that you at least get a chance to respond to it because a few people have mentioned it. As you're sitting in Israel, I imagine you understand your primary responsibility to be with your neighbors, be they Jewish or Arab or Palestinian or whatever religion, whatever ethnicity, that's who you work with. You're also, of course, seeing the images coming in from Gaza, heartbreaking, devastating images.
Yeah.
Do you have any response to the news that's coming in from across the border?
Sure. I have to say, it's heartbreaking same way. I'm so terrified by the fact that the Hamas use civil people as also as captive people, all the hospitals, it's civic society is not safe in Gaza, not because of Israelis, but because of Hamas. So, what can we do if we need to fight Hamas? Because it's not that they want peace with us, it's they want to ruin, our lives, and they did so. So it's heartbreaking to see every time that our soldiers and the army said to the civic society, go away, we're going to fight these places. It's hard to believe that Hamas is using women and kids to protect soldiers because they know that we won't fight them. So for me, it's so hard to see. It's a big dilemma. What should our soldiers do? And these are our kids. It's not, professional soldiers. They're kids who were educated for the priority of human lives. But they know now that they need to protect our country, our people from this terrorism. So it's heartbreaking to see what's going on there. And every time that there may be, innocent people that died, I'm terrified. And I'm very angry for the brutality of some Jewish people in the West Bank against Arabs. I feel so angry at them, but we are in a war. What can we do? It's not that we can give them anything to tell them, okay, let's be friends. The Hamas is not friend. They ruin lives, and we need to protect ourselves. So this is a war, and it's terrifying. But we keep getting missiles on our homes all over Israel. It's not a joke. They're sending missiles every day to all over the country. So just think, what would you do if someone will send missiles to your home? Would you say, oh, never mind? What can we do? We have to protect ourselves. And I'm also sending you asked for the link for.
I was going to say exactly that. We're about to.
Right. I did. I put that in the link. I put that in the chat a few moments ago.
Okay.
So that is in the chat, and we'll publish the recording of this event also. Oh, thank you very much, Michal. So I hope everybody sees that. We'll publish this information when we put this conversation online. Michal, you ended the last comment with what can we do, and it's clear that everything that you can do, you are doing. I on behalf of the many people in the chat and our Q&A that have said this, thank you for your work. I want to thank Yehudah for convening this conversation. People should know that Professor Mirsky himself is heavily involved in day-to-day volunteering and organizing in Jerusalem and in the entire region as well. Professor Muszkat-Barkan, thank you very much. We wish you and everyone over there safety and just we thank you for all of your important work that you're doing for the entire region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We will continue this series on Israeli civil society during war on Thursday, the 7th of December at 12 p.m. and with Rabbi Yael Vorgan, who's the rabbi of the Gaza area Jewish communities. And then again on the 14th of December with Mr. Mohammed Daraushe, who is a Palestinian civil leader inside of Israel. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.